Does the consumer have the power to make a change? Bill H3242 is getting congressional support in favor of food labeling. What's in the foods that you regularly eat? Do you think that the exact labeling of chemicals in the food should be transparent for the consumer? That's what the Right to Know advocacy campaign is hoping to achieve in the state of Massachusetts. But let's start with the basics. What are GMOs, and why do we have to label them?
GMO stands for genetically modified organism. That's created by taking the DNA of one species, mixing it with often bacterial and viral DNA, and then forcing that remixed DNA into the genome of another species, in this case, a food crop. It's important to distinguish that this process of genetic engineering is quite different than the process of traditional breeding that has produced food crops for the last 10,000 years.
Many argue that if the process of genetically engineering food is so complex, the public has a right to know what they are putting into their bodies. What foods are the most affected by GMOs?
There's the big five are corn, soy, canola, sugar beets, and cottonseed.
It's no secret that GMOs get a bad rap. Genetically modifying foods is seen as dangerous when in reality there is very little long-term evidence that supports the claim. Right to Know Massachusetts said they are all about the facts and education.
You can't categorically say that GMOs are good or bad. Anyone who's saying that GMOs are across the board safe, or anyone who's saying that across the board they're dangerous, is not speaking scientifically.
Thank you. No, thank you. 75.
Still, does the public have a right to be concerned? If GMOs are not being labeled and tracked, that means they could be good or bad for humans and no one would even know.
These foods, genetically engineered foods, are not tested for safety by the federal government. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, does not perform or require independent safety testing of genetically engineered crops.
Right to Know Massachusetts is fighting for the obvious labeling of foods containing GMOs through Bill H3242, officially named the Genetic Engineering Transparency Food and Seed Labeling Act. It has received substantial legislator support with over 150 members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate signing on as co-sponsors.
Legislation has been passed in Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont. And now we're working in Massachusetts to pass similar legislation that would provide that piece of information.
The next public hearing to decide the fate of H3242 is still waiting to be scheduled, but it will be up to the democratic process to see if the issue is important enough for the 2016 ballot. For Emerson College, I'm Daniela Jusino.